Brought to you by Black Sweaters, I think, is the sponsor of today's program. I'm dressed like quads, which is not a bad thing necessarily, although be careful, Dave, when you have a black curtain behind you as a backdrop, a black sweater may not be the best outfit. Harm popping off as he so often does. Doesn't matter what the backdrop is for Harm. Looks like $1 million.
This is green. This is supposed to be green.
Checked. Okay.
Dark green. But you can't see it. You can't see it.
Very dark green.
Very dark green. Like this. Sparing no expense. Look at the backdrop here.
Yeah, let's get a green screen, Jacob. Put it on the list.
We have a green screen in the back. I don't know if you knew that, but we could absolutely put a green screen behind you guys if you want.
This isn't a green screen, by the way. I am at Rogers Arena. That is the Jumbotron.
It's a good looking green screen you got there, Jeff. Okay, so you're at Rogers
doing green screen. I'm one of the. I would do like a tropical island if I was doing green screen. I'd be coming to you from somewhere in the South Pacific, but I am here at Rogers Arena after Canucks practice.
You're here at Rogers Arena, Canucks practice. What did you see there? We saw power play lines. Let's start there, Jeff, because something that we're going to disagree about on today's show, Harmon and I, is preseason line combinations. And you even wrote about this at Canucks Army as well, that it was time for the Canucks to get their power play units together. They'll get one preseason game, but they are going to get a few practice days, the first of which was today. What did you see of the Canucks' first power play unit?
Well, they didn't officially do power play drills at the end, and you guys have seen this from time to time. The power play guys haven't been together on the ice very much. They just wanted to get after it, and so it was sort of an ad hoc kind of thing. And Jake DeBrusk was the guy that was in the bumper. So that was great. I wanted to see what Power Play 2 might look like, because I think there's really some curiosity there and some options. And yet they didn't do Power Play 2. Power Play 2 they didn't run through Power Play 2 drills. So part of that was because Daniel Sprong was at the other end of the ice having one of those heart-to-hearts with Rick Tocchet that we have seen an awful lot through the years. So Sprong, who I think would be on the second unit, wasn't available. So it was just a sort of tail end of practice. But what I thought was interesting, because I asked Rick Tocchet about in Penticton, he said, we want to get a jump on other teams. We want to get to work early on our power play. And they really haven't done much of that. He did say that even though the groups haven't been together and JT hasn't played a game and Quinn's only played one, they've been doing film work with Yogi Svevkoski, the new assistant coach who's going to be in charge of the power play. They've been working on video, bouncing ideas off each other. So it hasn't been a complete afterthought. It's just that we haven't seen the game group together. Look, the power play deserted them down the stretch and certainly into the playoffs. They do need to be better on that power play, particularly the first unit. So that's been one of the surprises. And you're right. I wrote about that. I said it should be time to get after it with the 2 games to go. Obviously, we saw the lineup that they sent to Edmonton last night. So there's one dress rehearsal. Who knows how many power plays they'll get in that game, but it is something to watch to see if they're on top of things when the season opens on October 9th, or if it takes them a little time to rediscover the good stuff with the power play because they didn't have it for the final 25 games or through the playoffs last year.
Archie Bains was taking rushes on the fourth line. Were you surprised at all that he made it over Phil Giuseppe, at least to this point? And what have you seen overall from him in camp and preseason?
Yeah, scored a nice goal last night on the power play. I don't think he's going to be a power play guy at this stage of his career, but he works hard. And I think he's done his fair share of winning battles. So this is a guy that's never taken no for an answer and worked his way up from, a big scorer in the Western League. People know the story, obviously, through the AHL and getting a taste twice last year in the National Hockey League. The goals are great. I don't think that they're going to be the separator for him, though. Was I a little surprised? Yeah. Look, Rick Tocchet talked about how difficult it was. He's got a ton of time for Phil Giuseppe. We've seen that. Phil Giuseppe is just a true pro, low-maintenance guy that shows up and works hard and played up in the top 6 for Tocchet at times. And so he said it was difficult, but he said it also speaks to organizational depth, and Archie Bains is part of that. Tocchet himself said, when I got here, these weren't even decisions we had to make because we didn't have guys down on the farm. So he said it does show how far the organization has come in terms of bringing in depth guys that are pushing from below. And whether that's Archie Bains or Atu Ratu, Linus Karlsson, who showed reasonably well earlier, but he was among this wave. Leclerc Mackey, at some point sooner rather than later, he's going to be up with the big team. So, yeah, I think that's good from an organizational standpoint that they have to make some of these decisions, but you feel for a guy like Phil Giuseppe, who, again, just shows up and does what the organization asks of him. And for his role, it's fine. I mean, he's a fringe National Hockey Leaguer. I don't think he'll get claimed due to his age, because I think most organizations have a Phil Giuseppe of their own already in their system. But if there's a team that wants a penalty killer and a fourth line guy that's just going to show up and play hard, then maybe he'll get some looks. But for Arshdeep, it's one less guy now to climb over, and to make this round of cuts, I think shows how high the organization is on him. Again, we saw him in his 2 call-ups last year. I still think that his NHL debut, the game in Colorado, was probably the best start to finish that he has played. And maybe that was him on adrenaline and just, getting that opportunity and wanting to make the most of it. The second call-up, there wasn't as much there in his game. He took penalties. So if he can clean some things up, I think he'll play games for the Vancouver Canucks. I'm not convinced that he's going to make it over the final hurdle here when they set their roster. And I think something that we have to keep in mind here, guys, is salary cap implications. Akito Hirose is injured. Rick Tocchet dropped the C word, concussion. Hirose wasn't going to make the big league roster, but he was hurt in camp here. You can't send him down if he's injured. So let's see where that goes with Akito Hirose, because that could throw a bit of a wrench, I think, into some of their plans as far as salary cap and that type of maneuvering that they're going to have to do. And are they going to keep 23 guys to start the season? They didn't want to start the year in LTIR. Might they start with 21 or 22? If that's the case, then those are jobs that aren't available to some of these guys that are still here battling, whether it's an Arshdeep Bains, whether it's Atu Ratu, Mark Friedman on defense, I think might be living on borrowed time. But if they want to go with 8 defensemen, then maybe he does survive. So we'll see where things go. The final roster hasn't been set, and obviously Pia Suter's uncertainty now, that clouds things a little bit, but there is still a week here before they start playing games that matter.
Jeff, anything else stand out to you at practice? You just gave us so many updates. I don't even know where to go from there. Is there just anything else that stood out, I guess, at practice today?
Sorry, Dave, I missed the question.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Excellent. Anything that stood out to you at practice today? Just like stuff that jumps off the page at you.
Yeah, JT Miller was flying. He was out here, and he was asked a couple of times afterwards what's going on, but he copped to the fact that he has been dealing with something at the very least. It hasn't prevented him from skating with the non-game groups. He's been practicing. Said he hadn't taken a day off, but he just said it was common sense that playing a game might put him in harm's way, and we've seen what's happened around the National Hockey League here in the preseason with Drew Doughty and Patrick Laine and some others. And he just said it was the prudent thing to do. So he declared that he will play on Friday. He'll play. So, yeah, I mean, he was going full speed here at practice. And, I guess Sprong on the top line, or not the top line, but on the line with Elias Paterson. That's something we've been waiting to see. Teddy Bluger looks like he's good to go. Didn't talk to him after practice, but centering that third line with Höglander and Garland. And if Suter is out any length of time, then I think Teddy Bluger is going to slide in and perform admirably in that spot. And then, the defense shook down the way that we kind of thought it would, that Hronek and Hughes together leaves some questions about what's beneath those two guys on the depth chart here. But it does look like, in the short term at least, they're going to go with Desharnais and Forbert as the third pair. And Soucy and Myers obviously played a fair bit together last year and through the playoffs. So, yeah, I mean, there weren't any great surprises. I thought it was interesting that Francesco Aquilini came out and sat with Patrick Galliani and Jim Rutherford and watched a good chunk of the practice from the 10th row of the black seats, the good club seats right behind the benches. But, we see the owner from time to time watching practices, but not generally in the preseason. So, the top of the organization was on hand here getting a look at the group that survived this latest round of cuts.
Wanted to get a real close-up look at Atu Ratu.
I was going to say, did the cuts happen before or after that?
No, I think the cuts went down this morning, and then these guys got to work on at noon. It was kind of funny. They were all out on the ice. I tweeted it out, but it was a bit of a laugh. Quinn Hughes was the last guy to make his way out from the locker room, and for a while there, it looked like practice was about to begin without the captain, which would have been noteworthy. And then Quinn sauntered down the tunnel and onto the ice to a bunch of stick taps from his teammates who acknowledged that he made it under the wire because it was a noon practice, and I think he got out there with about 3 minutes to spare. But, it's one of those things that if you're not 5 minutes early, you're late in pro sports. Practice went ahead, and Quinn was a full participant, but teammates giving him the gears there with a little stick tap as he was the last participant to make his way onto the ice.
Jonathan Leclerc was among the players sent down to Abbotsford as well. I don't think there's any real surprises there because he looked decent in camp and at times in preseason, but it'll be good for him to spend some time developing down there in Abbotsford and playing a big role. Overall, when you look at this was probably our first real look at Leclerc for an extended stretch in North America as far as training camp and preseason. What did you learn about his skill set, his potential readiness down the road? What were your just overall takeaways of having this opportunity to watch Leclerc closely over the last 2-3 weeks?
Yeah, that I think he's probably closer than I thought he was. I kind of figured that he would need a full season in the American Hockey League, and after watching him in Penticton and then putting in a position to succeed with top line guys from day one of camp, and I like that from the organization. The shot is undeniable, and we saw it through camp. You were there. Into the preseason, he certainly had moments. The goal, he'll take it, but that was a fluke. Let's be honest. Up and over and into that the other night in Calgary, but they do all count. What I like is even last night in Edmonton, where they were undermanned by far. He's a volume shooter, and he leads the team with 4 shots on goal. Now, he didn't look all that dangerous on his 4 shots, but I want to see him with the puck in the offensive zone. And if he's getting 4 shots on goal a night, I like his chances of making some things happen as the season rolls along. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he looks like in Abbotsford. I assume that he'll be a top line guy and a power play guy there. And they just have to, he has to keep pushing and make it to the point where the organization can't deny him to bring him up and give him a look. But right now, he didn't make the grade here. And I'm not surprised by that. And that's not a knock on him. I don't think anybody should look at it that way. Young player, first full season in North America. Take everything from these experiences here through training camp and the preseason and apply them now. I think Abbotsford's starting its training camp tomorrow. So, he's an American Hockey Leaguer. Be the best American Hockey Leaguer possible. And his time will come. It'll probably come sooner rather than later. But it was some of those things away from the puck, defensive zone coverage. Even last night on the Corey Perry goal, I think he lost his man briefly. And at the NHL level, if that happens, more often than not, bad things are going to occur for your team. So overall, I think it was a success. I think he checked a lot of the boxes that the Canucks wanted to see from him. And he's going to be a big part of what they've got here moving forward. But it's just not going to happen for him at the NHL level out of training camp. And again, I think it's important to stress that this shouldn't be seen as any sort of failure or disappointment. This is where he needs to be right here, right now. When I say here, I mean the American Hockey League, because I'm here at Rogers Arena and he isn't anymore. So that could get a little confusing.
There he is, Jeff Paterson from Rogers Arena, in case you didn't know. Jeff, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll chat with you every Tuesday. Excited to work with you all season long.
Looking forward to it. This time next week, we'll be on the eve of the regular season. There'll be games because the season starts over in Europe. So, bring it on. It'll be fun to be with you guys on a weekly basis here on the Convo.
There he is, Jeff Paterson. Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.